This story is titled, My Girlfriend Gave My Gaming PC to Her Brother as a Present, so I packed her bags and told her to leave. Hi everyone, before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and make sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Hey guys, I really need to get this off my chest, because I've been losing sleep over it, and I just don't know if I handled it right. So, my girlfriend of 3 years did something that's left me completely blindsided. It's about my gaming PC, but it's not just about the PC, it's about respect and boundary. I'm going to lay it all out here, and I'd love to hear what you guys think because I feel like I'm going crazy. Alright, so a bit of background first. I'm 28, male, and I've been with my girlfriend. Let's call her Lisa, for 3 years. For the last 2 years, she's been living with me in the house I bought a few years before we started dating. I'm really proud of this place because I worked my ass off to save for it. It's not a mansion or anything, but it's comfortable. When Lisa moved in, it felt like the right step in our relationship. She was working as a receptionist at the time, and wasn't making a ton of money, so I took on most of the financial responsibility. I didn't mind. I've got a stable job in IT, and I'm comfortable enough to cover the bills. She contributed in other ways, cooking, keeping things organized, and just generally being there. It felt like we were building a life together, and I liked that. Now, I need to admit something. I'm a massive gaming nerd. Like, gaming is my thing. It's how I unwind after a long day, and honestly, it's a big part of who I am. Last year, I finally built my dream gaming PC. This wasn't just some off-the-shelf thing. I poured months of research into picking the best components, saved every spare dollar I could, and then spent an entire weekend putting it together. I'm talking high-end graphics card, liquid cooling, RGB everything, and a sleek tempered glass case that I still think about more than I probably should. The setup was a masterpiece. I didn't just stop at the PC either. I got a 34-inch ultra-wide monitor, a mechanical keyboard that sounds as good as it feels, and a gaming mouse that fit my hand like a glove. In total, the whole setup cost me about $2,500. For me, it wasn't just a computer. It was a project, a reward for years of hard work, and my escape from the world. Lisa never really understood the gaming stuff, but she didn't seem to mind it either. She'd tease me sometimes, calling it my big boy toy, but it was always in good fun. At least I thought it was. I even tried to explain the building process to her once, going into detail about how each component worked together. She didn't seem particularly interested, but she nodded along and smiled, which I appreciated. I thought she respected that it was my hobby, my space. Fast forward to last week. I had to go on a 3-day work trip for a client meeting. Nothing crazy, just a quick thing. Before I left, I made sure everything in the house was locked up and in its place. I didn't think twice about leaving Lisa in charge. She'd been living here for 2 years, and I trusted her completely. Before I left, I even joked, "Don't burn the house down while I'm gone." And she rolled her eyes, laughing. Everything seemed normal. When I got back, the first thing I noticed was how quiet the house felt. Normally, when I walked in, I'd hear something like Lisa watching Netflix, the hum of my PC if I'd forgotten to turn it off, maybe music playing. This time, there was nothing. I called out, "Hey, I'm home," and got a muffled, "Hey," from the dining area. I walked in and found her sitting at the table, scrolling on her phone all chill. That's when I noticed something was off. My gaming desk, which sat proudly in the corner of the living room, was empty. Completely empty. At first, I thought maybe Lisa had moved my setup. Like maybe she was reorganizing or cleaning, or maybe something had broken and she'd moved it temporarily. I even chuckled to myself thinking, what did she do this time? I casually asked, "Hey, where's my PC? Did you move it?" Lisa didn't even look up from her phone. She just said, "Oh, I gave it to my brother." I froze. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. "Wait, what?" I asked, my voice already cracking. "You gave it to your brother?" She finally looked up and said, "Yeah, his birthday is coming up, and he's been wanting a gaming PC forever. I figured it'd be a nice gift." She said it so casually, like she'd just given away a book I wasn't reading anymore. I stood there, trying to process what I just heard. "You gave away my PC? The one I built and paid for as a gift?" My voice was louder, and I couldn't hide the anger creeping in. Lisa shrugged. "You've got a good job. You can just build another one. It's not like it's a big deal." At that moment, it felt like my brain short-circuited. I didn't know whether to yell, laugh, or cry. The worst thing is the fact that she'd given it away without even asking me, just decided on her own that it was fine to take something I worked so hard for and hand it to her brother as a gift. I was too stunned to respond right away. I just stared at her, hoping she'd realize how much she'd messed up, but she didn't. She just sat there, looking at me like I was the one overreacting. That was the moment I realized something was seriously wrong, not just with what she did, but with how little she seemed to care about it. After a moment of silence, I started pacing, trying to keep my frustration in check. Lisa, that's not the point. This isn't just about money. That PC wasn't some random thing I picked up at the store. I spent months researching the parts, saving up, and building it. It's not replaceable. What the hell were you thinking about? She rolled her eyes, which only made me angry. You're being so dramatic, she said, like I was the one acting irrational. My brother really wanted a gaming PC, and I thought it'd be a nice gesture from us. You always say we're a team, so what's yours is mine, right? I stopped pacing and stared at her. What's mine is yours. Are you serious right now? That doesn't mean you get to take my stuff and give it away? Lisa crossed her arms and leaned back again. Well, we're practically married anyway, so yes, what's yours is mine. Plus, you're always playing games instead of spending time with me. So I thought this would be good for our relationship too. I couldn't even respond right away. I was too stunned by how casually she was dismissing what she'd done and saying we are married while we didn't even talk about that matter before. That was another whole issue. We're not married, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. And even if we were, that doesn't mean you get to make decisions about my stuff without asking me first. She scoffed. You're acting like I sold your car or something. It's a PC. You'll live. Her complete lack of remorse was making it harder and harder to stay calm. I felt my hands balling into fists at my sides. I was both angry at her, also trying so hard to keep my emotions in check. Lisa, you gave away something that didn't belong to you. Do you understand how wrong that is? She shrugged. I don't know what you want me to say. It's already done. I'm not going to call him and ask for it back. That would be humiliating. My jaw practically hit the floor. You think asking for it back would be humiliating? What about the fact that you took it without asking me? You don't think that's wrong? Lisa just sighed and went back to scrolling on her phone like the conversation was over. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe how little she cared. I felt my stomach drop as I realized this wasn't just about a misunderstanding. This was a complete disregard for my boundaries and my trust. After a few moments of silence, I asked the only thing I could think of. Did you at least give him the PC by itself? Or did you take the monitor and peripherals too? She didn't even look up. I gave him everything. What's the point of a gaming PC if he doesn't have the stuff to go with it? I was completely baffled. My ultra-wide monitor, my mechanical keyboard, my gaming mouse, all gone. Every piece of the setup I'd carefully chosen and put together was now sitting in someone else's house because Lisa decided it was a nice gesture. I had to sit down. My legs felt like they couldn't hold me up anymore. I stared at the empty desk in the corner, imagining my setup as it used to be. The glowing lights, the hum of the fans, the feeling of satisfaction every time I sat down to play, it was all gone. I tried to take a deep breath, but it didn't help. My chest felt tight, and my mind was racing. That's when I decided to call her brother. Maybe he didn't know the full story. Maybe Lisa had told him I was okay with it. Maybe I could reason with him and get my stuff back. I pulled out my phone and dialed his number. He picked up after a few rings. Hey, what's up? He said, his voice casual, like nothing was wrong. I wasted no time. Hey, I just got back from my trip, and Lisa told me she gave you my gaming setup. I need it back. There was a pause, and then he laughed. He actually laughed. Oh man, I was wondering how long it would take for you to call. Listen, my sister gave it to me fair and square. If you want it back, you're gonna have to buy it off me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious right now? She didn't have the right to give it to you in the first place. It's my stuff. I built it. I paid for it. Well, he said, his tone still annoyingly casual. It's mine now. And if you want it, it's gonna cost you. I'm thinking $3,500 sounds fair. That's what I'd have to pay to get something this nice on my own. I felt my blood pressure spike. You're trying to charge me to get my own stuff back? Do you hear how insane that sounds? He just laughed again. Finders keepers, man. Anyway, I gotta go. Enjoy the rest of your day. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there, staring at my phone, my hands shaking. I couldn't believe what had just happened. Not only had Lisa given away my PC, but her brother was now trying to extort me to get it back. When I told Lisa about the call, she barely reacted. What do you want me to do about it? She said. I'm not going to take back a gift? That's just rude. Then, of course, her family decided to get involved in the most frustrating way possible. They started bombarding me with messages, calling me selfish and materialistic for wanting the PC back. Her mom even called to lecture me about how I should be honored, that Lisa considered me part of their family. She kept saying that real men provide for their family and implied that I was being petty for not letting her brother keep the gift. The audacity of it all was almost laughable. I couldn't believe they were trying to guilt me for standing up for myself after their daughter had given away something that wasn't even. Instead of apologizing or helping to resolve the situation, they acted like I was the problem. It was infuriating and just added more fuel to the fire. I realized at that moment, it had nothing to do with the PC. Now they are playing with trust, respect, and boundaries, and Lisa had completely shattered them all. Now, I couldn't let this go. I wasn't even sure what bothered me more, Lisa's blatant disregard for my property or her brother's smug attitude about keeping something he had no right to. Either way, I knew I had to take action. I started by calmly trying to explain to Lisa, again, why this was such a big deal. Lisa, this isn't just about money. You gave away something that I built with my own hands, something that I poured hours into researching and assembling. It's not just a thing, it's the principle. She didn't look up from her phone. You're overthinking this. It's just stuff. And it's not like it's gone forever. It's with my brother. You can visit it if you're that attached. Visit it? I repeated, my voice rising. It's not a dog that I gave up for adoption, Lisa. It's my property. Do you not understand how insane this is? Her dismissive attitude only fueled my frustration. Well, what do you want me to do about it now? I'm not going to embarrass myself by asking for it back. It's his birthday present. You're not embarrassing yourself, I said, trying to keep my tone level. You're fixing something you had no right to do in the first place. She put her phone down, finally looking at me with a mix of annoyance and exhaustion. I can't take it back. That would make me look bad. And giving it away without asking me doesn't make you look bad? I shot back. She had no response to that, just a glare that told me I was getting nowhere. I decided to stop wasting my energy trying to reason with her. If she wasn't going to fix this, I'd have to handle it myself. I thought of contacting the police. I had all the receipts for the components I'd bought, as well as the serial numbers for most of the parts. I'd saved them just in case I ever needed warranty claims, but now they were going to serve a different purpose. Before filing a report, I called her brother one last time. I wanted to give him one more chance to do the right thing before escalating things further. Listen, I started, keeping my tone as calm as possible. I don't want to make this a bigger deal than it already is, but I need my PC and peripherals back. If you return them now, we can avoid any unnecessary trouble. His response was just as smug as before. I already told you, man. If you want it back, you're gonna have to buy it from me. I'm not giving it up for free. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my cool. You do realize that it wasn't Lisa's to give away, right? It's mine. I paid for it. Well, she gave it to me, so as far as I'm concerned, it's mine now, he said, laughing. You're acting like I stole it or something. You did steal it, I said firmly. If you don't return it, I'll have no choice but to file a police report. That got his attention. He paused for a moment before saying, Go ahead. Do what you gotta do. I'm not scared of a little police report. This kid was either incredibly arrogant or incredibly stupid. Either way, I was done trying to reason with him just like his sister. I gathered all the receipts and serial numbers and went down to the local police station to file a report for theft. The officer I spoke with was surprisingly understanding. I explained the situation, showed him the receipts, and even played the recording of her brother essentially admitting that he had the PC and wasn't planning on giving it back. The officer told me they'd open an investigation and contact Lisa's brother to confirm the details. He also advised me to record any further interactions with Lisa or her family, just in case things escalated. When I got back home, Lisa was sitting on the couch watching TV, completely unbothered. She barely acknowledged me when I walked in. "Where'd you go?" she asked casually, like everything was fine. "To file a police report," I said bluntly, dropping my bag on the floor. She turned to me, her eyes wide. "You did what?" "I filed a report," I repeated. "Your brother has my PC and he's refusing to give it back. I told him I'd get the police involved if he didn't return it, and he basically dared me to. So now it's out of my hands." She stood up, looking angry and defensive. "Are you serious? You're involving the police over a stupid computer?" "It's not just a computer, Lisa," I said, my voice firm. "It's my property, and if you're not going to do anything to fix this, then I have to." She started pacing, throwing her hands in the air. "This is ridiculous. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Do you know how embarrassing this is going to be for me and my family? Embarrassing for you?" I said, incredulous. "You're the one who started this by giving away something that didn't belong to you. If you'd just asked me first, we wouldn't even be in this situation." She stopped pacing and glared at me. "I can't believe you'd go this far over a computer." "It's not just about the computer," I said, my patience wearing thin. "It's about the fact that you think it's okay to take something of mine without asking, and then act like I'm the bad guy for wanting it back. This isn't just some little misunderstanding, Lisa. This is theft." Her expression shifted from anger to something that looked almost like guilt, but she quickly masked it with more indignation. "I was just trying to do something nice for my brother. I didn't think it would be such a big deal." "That's the problem," I said, shaking my head. "You didn't think. Or if you did, you didn't care about how I'd feel. And now you're more worried about how this makes you look than about making things right. She didn't have a response to that. Instead, she just crossed her arms and stared at me like she was waiting for me to drop the whole thing. But I wasn't about to let it go. I sat down on the couch, trying to collect my thoughts. My mind was spinning with everything that had happened. I couldn't believe it had come to this. Filing a police report against my own girlfriend's brother? Threatening legal action to get back something that was mine to begin with? This wasn't how I imagined my life would look when Lisa moved in 2 years ago. But as much as it hurt to realize how far things had gone, I knew I couldn't back down. This wasn't just about the PC anymore. It was about standing up for myself and drawing a line in the sand. If Lisa couldn't see how wrong she was, then maybe it was time to reevaluate the entire relationship. I didn't want to think about that yet, though. One step at a time. For now, I just needed to focus on getting my PC back and figuring out what kind of person I was really dealing with. The next couple of days were a blur. I was constantly checking my phone, waiting for updates from the police about the report I'd filed. The tension in the house was unbearable. Lisa and I barely spoke to each other. She spent most of her time in the bedroom, scrolling on her phone or watching TV, while I stayed in the living room, trying to distract myself. Every now and then, I'd catch her throwing me these frustrated glances, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. It was infuriating. I could feel my anger bubbling up every time I thought about her complete lack of accountability. The worst part was, she didn't even seem to care about how this was affecting me. It was like she'd already moved on, while I was left trying to figure out how to fix the mess she'd created. Then, late one evening, I got a call from the police. They'd spoken to her brother, and things were starting to move forward. According to the officer, her brother admitted to having the PC, but claimed it was a gift from Lisa, and therefore his to keep. I explained again that Lisa didn't have my permission to give it away, and the officer assured me that they'd continue investigating. The next morning, I confronted Lisa about the call. "The police spoke to your brother," I said, watching her carefully for any reaction. "He's sticking to his story that you gave it to him as a gift." She barely looked up from her coffee. "Because I did. You gave him something that wasn't yours to give," I said, my frustration boiling over. "Do you not see how insane this is?" She sighed. "I don't know what you want me to say. I already told you I'm not going to ask for it back. What's done is done." I stared at her, trying to understand how she could be so indifferent. "Do you even care about what you've done? Or are you just hoping this will all blow over?" She rolled her eyes. "I'm not going to grovel over a computer. You're making this way bigger than it needs to be." That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. "Lisa, this isn't just about the computer. This is about the fact that you've completely disregarded my feelings and my property. You don't even seem to care about how much this has hurt me." Her face softened for a moment, and for a split second, I thought she might actually apologize. But instead, she said, "I didn't mean to hurt you, okay? I was just trying to do something nice for my brother. I thought you'd understand." I stared at her, feeling a mix of disbelief and exhaustion. I realized, in that moment, that all of this was about trust, something that had been completely shattered. "Lisa," I said, my voice firm, "I can't do this anymore. You've crossed every line and you don't even seem to care. I've tried to explain why this hurt me, but you've brushed it off every single time. I can't be with someone who thinks this is okay." Her eyes widened. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice sharper now, like she couldn't believe what was happening. "I'm saying you need to leave," I said firmly. "This is my house, my safe space, and I can't share it with someone who has no respect for me or my boundary." Her jaw dropped, and for a moment, she was completely silent. Then, as if trying to regain control, she scoffed. "You're seriously kicking me out over a stupid computer?" "It's not just the computer," I said, standing up. "It's everything. The lies, the lack of respect, the way you've dismissed my feelings. I don't trust you anymore, Lisa. And without trust, there's nothing left." Without waiting for her response, I walked into the bedroom and grabbed a suitcase from the closet. I started packing her clothes, keeping my movements steady even though my hands were shaking. She followed me into the room, shouting things like, "You're overreacting," and "You're going to regret this." But I didn't stop. When the suitcase was full, I zipped it up and rolled it to the front door. "You can stay with your brother," I said, my voice firm but quiet. "Or anyone else you've manipulated. But you can't stay here anymore." She stood there for a moment, as if waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, she grabbed the suitcase and stormed out while crying. As soon as she was gone, I sank onto the couch, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. It wasn't easy, but I knew I'd made the right choice. For the first time in days, the house felt quiet. Not the heavy, suffocating silence from before, but a peaceful kind of quiet. But Lisa's next move showed me exactly who she really was. Instead of taking responsibility for what she'd done, Lisa called her father and spun the situation in a way that made me the villain. Less than an hour later, her dad showed up at my house with 2 of his friends. I could tell from the moment I opened the door that they weren't there to talk things out. Her dad tried to play the role of a tough guy, standing tall and using his most authoritative voice as he started lecturing me about how I was blowing this out of proportion. He claimed he knew important people in town and could make my life very uncomfortable if I went through with the police report. It didn't stop there. One of his friends chimed in, making vague comments about how I should be careful about escalating things further. Her brother stood there smirking like he'd just won the lottery, clearly enjoying the show. It was 3-on-1, and they were doing their best to intimidate me into backing down, but I wasn't having it. Instead of engaging, I calmly pulled out my phone and started recording. Holding it up, I said, "Could you repeat those threats for the camera? I want to make sure I got everything right." Their entire demeanor shifted instantly. Her father, who had been full of bluster just seconds earlier, stumbled over his words, suddenly claiming they just wanted to talk things out like family. His friends exchanged nervous glances, clearly caught off guard by the recording. I kept my phone steady and said, "You're trespassing on my property. You have exactly 1 minute to leave before I call the police." That was all it took. They backed off, muttering something about how I was being unreasonable. As they walked away, her father turned back and gave me one last look. His face twisted with frustration. "You'll regret this," he said, pointing a finger at me like he was delivering some final warning. I locked the door behind them, feeling a mix of anger and relief. Their attempt to intimidate me hadn't worked, but the fact that Lisa had orchestrated this in the first place only made things worse. Later that afternoon, the police called again. This time, they had more information. Her brother had apparently tried to sell some of the components online. He'd listed the graphics card and a few other parts on a marketplace site, and the police had found the listings during their investigation. They told me they were working on getting a warrant to recover the items, but it might take some time. Hearing that only made me angry. Not only had Lisa given away my PC, but her brother had immediately started trying to profit off it. It was like a slap in the face. I decided I needed to take things a step further. I gathered every bit of evidence I could find to prove that the PC and its components belonged to me. I even dug out photos of the build process, showing each part as I installed it. That evening, things took another turn. I got a call from a friend who works in the gaming community. He'd heard about the situation and wanted to offer some advice. Apparently, Lisa's brother had been bragging about his new gaming rig on social media, posting pictures of the setup and thanking his sister for the amazing gift. My friend sent me screenshots of the posts, which included clear shots of my ultra-wide monitor and mechanical keyboard. Seeing those photos made my blood boil. It wasn't just the fact that my setup was in someone else's house. It was the smugness of it all. The way her brother was flaunting something he had no right to, acting like he'd earned it. I forwarded the screenshots to the police, hoping it would speed up the process. Now, I'm not sure what to expect, but I'm hoping things go well. I'll keep you all posted. Update 1. Hey guys, I came with an update since last week was chaotic. Things got even more complicated. What started as a dispute over my gaming PC was quickly unraveling into something much bigger. One afternoon, I got a call from the police with a surprising update. They had executed a search warrant at her brother's house and recovered most of my setup. My monitor was still intact, though the casing had some scratches, and the mechanical keyboard and mouse were returned in working condition. However, the PC itself was another story. The case was scratched, the GPU had been removed, and some of the internal components were either damaged or missing entirely. Her brother claimed he was just trying to figure out how it worked. I was furious but relieved to have at least some of it back. The officers told me they were gathering more evidence for potential theft charges, but the situation was far from over. Then, out of nowhere, I got another call, this time from someone claiming to be one of Lisa's distant relatives. They wanted to warn me about something. The man on the phone explained that Lisa had been telling her family we were secretly engaged. According to him, she'd been using that lie as a way to borrow money from her relatives, claiming it was for our wedding fund. My jaw dropped. I had never even proposed to Lisa, let alone agreed to plan a wedding. The man went on to say that Lisa had borrowed thousands of dollars from her family under false pretenses. He sounded genuinely upset, telling me he felt duped and asking if any of it was true. I hung up the phone, my head spinning. It all started to click. Lisa's refusal to apologize, her insistence that we were practically married, her family's overbearing attitude, it all made sense now. She wasn't just entitled, she was a manipulator. And I wasn't the only victim. When I confronted Lisa about it that night, she didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she broke down in tears, saying she'd only done it because she didn't know how else to help her family. "You don't understand," she sobbed. "I've been under so much pressure. My parents expect so much from me, and I couldn't handle disappointing them. I wasn't buying it." "You lied to your entire family, Lisa," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You've been using me as a prop in some elaborate scam, and you don't even have the decency to feel bad about it." Her tears dried up almost instantly. "You're so cold," she snapped. "I thought you'd understand. This is why I didn't tell you. I knew you'd make me feel like this." Her deflection only solidified my decision. I forwarded all the information I had about her wedding scam to the police and sent an email to her family, detailing everything I knew. I included screenshots of her brother's social media posts flaunting my stolen PC, photos of the damage to the components, and an explanation of how she'd been lying about our relationship. If she wanted to play the victim, I wasn't going to let her do it on my dime. The fallout was immediate. Her family was furious, not just at her, but at me for exposing her lies. I received angry messages from her mom, dad, and a few of her siblings, accusing me of being cruel and ruining Lisa's reputation. But as more and more evidence came to light, their attitudes began to change. It turned out Lisa had borrowed over $15,000 from various relatives, promising to pay it back once our wedding expenses were covered. Her parents were especially livid when they realized she had no intention of returning the money. The police, meanwhile, had uncovered even more dirt. During their investigation, they found evidence of multiple scams Lisa had been running. She'd been using photos of my gaming setup to advertise fake PC building services online. She collected deposits from people, some as high as $2,000, and never delivered the products. She had also opened several credit cards in her brother's name, racking up over $20,000 in debt without his knowledge. Her brother, who had initially laughed off the situation, was devastated when he found out. He came to me, practically in tears, apologizing for his behavior and explaining how Lisa had manipulated him his entire life. I was stunned how the antagonist in my story became my biggest supporter. He also offered to help fix what was left of my PC and even testified against her when the case went to court. The trial itself was a whirlwind. Lisa was charged with multiple counts of theft, fraud, and identity theft. Her lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of circumstance, claiming she'd only done what she did because of financial stress and pressure from her family. But the evidence was overwhelming. The police presented everything: her fake PC building scam, the stolen PC components, and the fraudulent credit card accounts. They even had testimony from her former victims, including one of her ex-boyfriends, who revealed she had once sold his car while he was out of town. As the jury deliberated, I couldn't help but sit there, torn between disbelief and a strange, lingering sadness. How did I not see through her? How did I let someone like Lisa into my life, let alone trust her? The evidence was so damning, so blatant, that it felt impossible to reconcile with the person I thought I knew. The charming, funny, and supportive Lisa I had spent so much time with. Was it all an act? Or was there some sliver of truth to the person she pretended to be? I guess I'll find out soon enough when the verdict comes in. But honestly, I don't know if I'll ever make sense of it all. Final update. Hey again. So the verdict's in, and let me tell you, it's been a roller coaster of emotion. So, when the verdict was finally read, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. The judge sentenced Lisa to 18 months in prison, citing the calculated nature of her crimes and her history of manipulating others. She was also ordered to pay restitution to all of her victims, including her own family. Her parents, who had initially defended her, refused to bail her out. Even her father, who had once tried to intimidate me, sent me a letter apologizing for his behavior and offering to help cover the cost of repairing my PC. But I didn't want anything to do with them anymore. They dragged me enough to their mess. Now it's my turn to rebuild everything. Despite the damage on my PC, I felt a weird sense of relief as I started working on restoring the setup. It reminded me of why I loved PC building in the first place. With every cable I reconnected and every part I replaced, I felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself that Lisa had tried to take away. Her brother, now fully aware of the extent of her manipulation, even offered to help. He apologized repeatedly and seemed genuinely remorseful for his role in the whole ordeal. While I didn't fully forgive him, I appreciated his effort to make things right. Meanwhile, Lisa's family had gone radio silent. After her sentencing, they stopped reaching out entirely. I later heard through a mutual acquaintance that her parents had cut ties with her, ashamed of how her lies had impacted them. They were stuck paying back the $15,000 she'd taken from her relatives under the guise of wedding expenses. Her brother was left cleaning up the financial mess she'd made of his credit, working multiple jobs to pay off the debt from the fraudulent cards she'd opened in his name. What surprised me the most was how quickly the gaming community rallied around the story once it spread. A local gaming group I was part of caught wind of the situation and organized a fundraiser to help me rebuild my setup. It wasn't just about replacing what I'd lost. It was about standing up against the kind of entitlement and dishonesty that Lisa had displayed. Seeing strangers come together to support me was humbling, and it reminded me that not everyone in the world was as self-serving as Lisa had been. Lisa's prison sentence was a wake-up call for everyone involved. Her family, who had spent years defending her actions and enabling her behavior, finally had to face the truth. They realized that their constant excuses and bailouts had only encouraged her to push the boundaries further and further. From what I've heard, Lisa's time in prison hasn't been easy for her. She's reportedly undergoing mandatory counseling as part of her sentence, and her lawyer hinted during the trial that she showed signs of being a compulsive liar with potential sociopathic tendencies. While I don't wish her any ill will, I hope that her time behind bars forces her to confront the damage she caused, not just to me, but to everyone she's hurt. As for me, I've moved on, but I'm a lot more cautious about who I let into my life. I haven't sworn off dating completely, but I'm much more aware of red flags and toxic behavior. I know now that the biggest betrayals don't always come in dramatic, obvious ways. Sometimes they're the result of small lies and manipulations that build up over time. Things we choose to ignore because we want to believe the best in people. If there's one thing this whole experience has taught me, it's that people will show you who they really are if you pay attention. And when they do, you have to decide whether you're willing to accept it or walk away. For me, walking away was the best decision I ever made.